All right, let's go ahead and study another graphing algorithm real quick. And this will help exercise the data structure of the adjacency list for our course. All right, so in this example, minimum spanning tree, the example they give is company needs to shut down a maximum number of connections and still be able to fly from one city to any other city. So let's say that the MAX 737s are all grounded and you now need to figure out what's the minimum number of connecting flights you can do to still service all of your customers, ignoring the fact that a lot of flights are now going to be longer. But we just want to be able that we can service at least everyone. And it's minimum because we want to be able to service everyone and minimize the cost of losing some flights. So obviously, well, hopefully you can tell from here that this is not a minimum spanning tree because there's multiple ways to go from 0 to 4. Again, if the lines do not have arrows, that means they're undirected. It means the connection is both ways. So, what are different ways to get to 4 from 0?
0, 1, 4.
And another?
0, 3, 4.
And another?
0, 2, 5, 4.
How about another?
0, 2, 6, 1, 4.
Yeah.
Dear Lord.
Nope, not 0, 4.
No, it said dear Lord.
Oh, right, so this is obviously not a minimal spanning tree because there's multiple ways to get from one place to another. Here's some minimal spanning trees because there's only one way to get from one place to another. So there are multiple solutions. I'm sorry, these are possible solutions. These are spanning trees, but not necessarily the minimal spanning tree, because they span in that there's only one way to get to each place, but there may not be minimal because they may not minimize the total cost. If you add all the numbers up, they probably do not all add up to the same number. Not at all. So it's not minimal, but there are definitely spanning trees. All right, let's do some more terms. What's a free tree? We don't care about that. Don't care, don't care. All right, let's go with pictures.
Pictures. That looks like pictures.
Pictures of words.
We're not going to go with pictures. How about that? Two well-known algorithms for finding the minimal spanning tree is Kruskal's and Prim's. So we can go through Prim's. In algorithms, you'll probably study Kruskal's, and then you can compare and contrast the differences, find out when one is better than the other. Builds a tree iteratively by adding edges until a minimal spanning tree is obtained. Start with a designated vertex called the source vertex, and each iteration adds a new edge that does not complete a cycle, and you add it to the tree. All right, very important. Start with a designated vertex. When I call prims, I am passing you what the start vertex is. You must use that as the start vertex, or your algorithm is going to produce something different than what the autograder is expecting. All right? So you have to start with the source vertex, sorry. So here's a tree, or a graph, I should say. It's not a tree at all. All right. Let's go break this apart because this is a lot of information, and usually when you do graph algorithms there's a lot of things running around, but when you take them apart each individual piece is not that complicated, and then the whole thing kind of just gels together. Alright, so how do we begin? Well, we have our general graph. We're going to construct a graph first in a list of vertices that we have visited. We're starting at 0 because that's our start vertice. We have no edges because our current spanning tree has one node. And of course, your spanning tree, a graph with one node is also a spanning tree because there's no edges, because it's just one node. Yeah! All right. And that's what that little null symbol is right over here. The N is going to keep track of the nodes that we still need to visit. Yes, that's an error over here. Ignore that. But these are the nodes we still need to visit. And under here are the list of edges that we can evaluate. Because we're at 0, we can go to 1, we can go to 3, and we can go to 5. Since we wish to select the minimal one, we obviously should select the smallest weight of all the edges that are available. So on this iteration, each iteration, we're going to select the smallest weight of the edges that are available to us. Okay, got it. So it might be a little tricky to think about or to implement that, but let's stick with what it means. So right now we're at 0, so you can only go to 1, 3, and 2. Going to 3 has a cost of 2, so we're going to select 3 because it's the lowest weight. So over here we have designated by a dot. We have vertices 0 and 3, and we have the edge 0 going to 3. This list down here should have 3 removed. That's an error on the slides. And now we list what edges we have available. Well, we can still go from 0 to 1. We can go from 0 to 2. But now that we're at 3, we can go from 3 to 4. And so you can those are all the edges that you may possibly visit. And of those, 5 is the lowest, and that's going from 0 to 2. So we're going to select 5. Anyone see what we're doing so far? Any questions?
Would there be a situation where if you went from 0 to 3, there was another edge from 3 to 0 that was the least, but we can't choose that because we already visited?
So in this one, for prims, you assume a undirected graph. So there's no, the edge going both directions is going to have the same weight. Good question, though. But in that case, it may, well, that's going to be a different problem. We'll say that's just a different problem.
Yeah, because we're using directed graphs, right?
Yes. So when I generate your graph, I'm going to make sure there's enough edges so that when you run this algorithm, it's going to work. That's why you have to use my start node. But to create, it's easy to create a directed, turn a directed graph into an undirected. You just make sure there's always an edge pointing back that has the same weight. So it's the same thing. All right, so we select going to 2, 0 to 2. Notice even though we selected 3, we're not branching off of that. We're still going from 0 to 2, so that's 5. So we've selected 0, 2, and 5 because we selected 2 right there. We add the edge 0 to 2 because that was the edge we selected. And now we only have 1, 4, 5, and 6. The reason why we keep track of these nodes is so that when we search all the edges that we can possibly go to, if we're going back to a node we've already been to, then we don't try and use it again. That's why you want to keep track of this. Then you generate, or you look at each possible edge, 0 to 1, 0 to 1, 2 to 5, sorry, 2 to 6, and 3 to 4. And the least is now 2 to 6, going from 2 to 6. So we're going to select this one. And what do we have? So the vertices now are 0, 2, 3, and 6. We've added that edge 2 and 6. That was our selection over here. The nodes left are 1, 4, and 5 because we selected 6. And now evaluating all these, we can still go from 0 to 1. We can go from 2 to 5. We can go from 3 to 4. And now we can go from 6 to 1. All right. Obviously, we select the 6 to 1 because it's the least. So there's 6 to 1 right there. We remove it from our node list. We add 6 to our vertices that we have so far. Now we can start evaluating these edges. So notice the edge 0 to 1 is gone. Why is that one gone? See, beforehand, we've been evaluating every single iteration. But now that we're over here, it's not part of the evaluated edges. Why is that?
It's already visited one day.
We've already visited it. It's part of our vertex collection. So it's not part of the nodes that we are assessing, or the edges we are going to assess, because that would create a cycle if we connected them. So of the ones we can visit, there's 1 to 4, there's 2 to 5 because we haven't been to 5, and there's 3 to 4 because we haven't been to 4 or 5. 1 to 4 is the least, 2, so we're going to select that one. So we select the, what was it, 4? 4. We add that edge. The last node is 5. We evaluate all the edges going to 5, which is basically 2 to 5 and 4 to 5. 7's the least, so we add that. Number of nodes left is the empty set. That means we have the graph up here. All right, how are we doing?
So how are we going to return this?
I haven't got to that yet. How are we with the algorithm?
Pretty good.
Pretty good? All right.
So this is just like, you start at a node, and then you pick the least weight of all the edges you have.
That you can possibly go to that doesn't generate a cycle or aka go back to where you've already been.
So this is like, I feel like this is what, if you told someone to generate one, this is what they would be.
Most graphing algorithms are that way. If you try to turn it out on paper, this is what you would do. We're just doing it in the computer. You just have to make that translation. A lot of graphing algorithms are that way, especially the when graph algorithms were first being developed. Of course, they're the intuitive human way that people are going to do it. Since Prim was the first one to publish it, he gets his name plastered to it, right? I mean, Dijkstra's algorithm is actually pretty straightforward. It's what I probably would have come up with if I thought about it for 5-10 minutes. But, you know, Dijkstra came up with it first. So he gets his name attached to it. Right? That's just how it is. All right. So the question, which was a very good question, is for the lab, what do I want? And I'm actually going to, I tried to make this easy because I didn't want you to try and return something crazy. And if I can scroll down, return the total weight. So you just add up the weights of all the edges and you return that number.
Okay.
And that's going to be the simplest way to do this. That way I don't have to mess with how you decide to store your list or your edges or anything like that. You just give me the total weight, and I can, most of the time, test fairly accurately if you did it correctly or not. So.
When you say fairly accurately, does that mean you have to double check it still?
I'm going to trust the autograder on this one. I'm sure with this one you've come up with a very complex algorithm that doesn't actually run prims and gives the correct answer to pass the autograder, but why would you do that?
Just one.
Technically you could run Kruskalls as well and get back the same answer if you did it right, but why would you do that? Again, make sure you start at the start node because since this is a directed graph, it may, if you start at a different node than what I pass to you, it may not give the correct weight on the way back. So just make sure you're aware of that. All right, besides that, write some test cases. It's due not a week from today because that would be our Wednesday off, but it'll be that Monday coming back from Turkey Day. Turkey Day. Yeah. You forgot about Turkey Day? How can you forget about Turkey Day?
No. It's really more about the macaroni and egg.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care about this.
It's mostly about the stuff that we're really talking about.
I like stuff.
I can eat a whole plate of stuff.
I can eat a whole bowl full of macaroni.
So that too.
It's the
Normally
only
my
day that I
plate
challenge
is
myself to eat as much
90%
as I possibly can in one day.
Macaroni
And
and
then
egg. That's
you
all I
can't be
eat.
judged by
See,
it.
I don't
because
know.
everyone else
You
does.
can't be
Macaroni,
judged
mashed
for it.
potatoes and gravy, stuffing,
great.
cranberry sauce.
I'm always judged for not eating enough.
And then this much turkey.
One Christmas,
That's eat
or
macaroni.
not one Christmas, one Thanksgiving,
Macaroni,
we went to
nobody
go
makes
to
it.
GameStop and see my brother the Xbox One. It just
I
came
need
out
to
that
try
year.
that.
We waited from like 6
Well,
p.m.
doesn't
till 1 o'clock in the morning
macaroni.
outside. I was starving the whole entire time.
I'm
This is
also
sin.
starving.
I'm starving on Thanksgiving.
My love.
I get 2 Thanksgiving meals, so I won't be starving.
I'll tell you a story once I stop recording.
No, they probably told that. Don't worry.
They need to know about our Thanksgiving meals.
Any other questions or comments about graphs? 'Cause that's all we're going to do with graphs. We're going to jump onto something different next.
Okay. What more are we learning the rest of the semester?
Well, so 2 semesters ago, certain students decided that even though I originally would finish off right here because I thought that was plenty, right? We went through all the basic data structures. We talked about them. I gave you 4 projects that cover, maybe not cover all of them extensively, but cover the mentality of how you solve problems by assessing the data structure, which is the important part. And then I got called to the dean's office because apparently I was letting students off a week early, or a week and a half. And so I got yelled at by the dean, saying that I now need to fill the course up with more work.
What?
You have these students to thank, not me, because I was.
Who complained?
So did someone complain?
So if they
Because
complained about not having enough work, couldn't you have just made some of the stuff last a little longer? Instead of doubling up on some of the labs, you could have just like extended it longer.
It probably could have done something like that, sure.
Sure. Just move one of the assignments.
But that didn't happen.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, or if we didn't have any more labs due, but
Still
we
have
just
a
still had the
project.
project, then we're still technically doing work.
No, because I haven't given you an assessment or assignment.
So that's what the project is, right?
Well, what am I gonna do? Solve the project for you?
Yes. Yes.
That'd be
That
nice.
defeats the purpose.
Maybe for you.
It could be a free laptop.
No, I was yelled at for doing that.
That's stupid.
I
want
want
to
to
meet
know
these
for
students.
class.
So because of that, we will go on to more specific data structures next time. But we've gone through what I would say the high-level sections of data structures.
So you're gonna make it easier?
Slightly,
I don't think you like that
maybe.
question, I forgot, sorry.
Will the labs be shorter now?
Can you make us just draw a graph?
Yes, we're gonna go back to C++ having to draw out from start to end all
Oh, I
the little
hated that.
drawings.
I needed that too.
That's
Yeah,
the
the first
worst
week.
thing ever.
Which one? Oh, the lab where we drew it in LaTeX?
No,
That-
that was
No.
fine.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say LaTeX is great.
That was easy. I got
I
it
mean,
the day of.
it was like, I mean, come on, guys.
We could-
Just copy and paste and then
Yeah,
make
I was
the
just
arrow and
having,
then
like,
just
I could
fix it real quick and you're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
So, yeah, any other questions?
I'm more interested just making sure my arrows are pointed in the right direction.
I will need to sit down and do a big, oh, we should do that right now.
Aw.
No, no, no.